We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. It is the Demo Guys podcast. I'm Sam Kaplan, founder of Brand Ambassador Consultants, joined as always by Jason Smith, founder of Velocity Goats. Fun show for everybody today, an informative show. We're going to open up with some headlines, lots of fun things going on in the world of CPG. Never a dull moment. It's been a pretty crazy summer in terms of drama within CPG. And then we will get to our main topic this week. Is your brand demo friendly? What makes a product demo friendly? And what can be done to make your product demo friendlier if it is not inherently demo friendly? So Jason, wanted to first off, how's your week going?
Sam, it's been good. I had a opportunity to, go to an event with the Whole Foods Market Northeast team at a Riverside chat the other day, which was really neat. Very informative with John Lawson. And then, just really trying to get a business going that, I'm still trying to understand how I do it. I'm a very loyal person to brands. I've tried to be a broker and stuff. And I'm one of those people that just really has a hard time wearing a lot of hats for different brands. I've always wanted to be loyal, and so I think that's something that's been a challenge for me trying to start my own demo company. But, I'm drinking from the fire hose. It is what it is. How's your week been, Sam?
It's going well. Lots of troubleshooting, some fires to put out, but I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. It kind of takes me back, Jason, some of the conversations we have, just the transition going from brand side to agency side. And it's a whole different world. There's positives and negatives, but thing that I love most about being on the agency side now is that I have the opportunity to help out multiple brands instead of having to be hyper focused on just one brand. But if you're new to the show and you ever have any questions about my agency, Jason's agency, our contact information there is on the ticker. Feel free to reach out. We are always open to free consultations, whatever we can do to help out brands in the better for you category, and even brands that might be just outside of the better for you category. But we've got a action-packed show. We're going to start out with some headlines here, Jason. So there is the graphic right there, just hot off the press, breaking news as we went to air here. Liquid Death. Surprised it hasn't happened earlier, but the picture, bad resolution there. What it says there on those cans is sparkling energy. Liquid Death now getting into the energy category. They've expanded their product line over the course of the last couple of years. Started out with just water, then sparkling water, tea, and then some other flavored waters. But I think this is a natural extension of the brand. Jason, what are your thoughts on Liquid Death here going into the very crowded energy category?
I think it was necessary, to be honest. I think if there's one line extension Liquid Death can pull off, this is the one. And I just say that because they obviously have the marketing already. That's been their strategy, and they have a clientele and a customer base already. And let's face it, energy drinks aren't going away. So if you're gonna, and for me, like Liquid Death, I'm not a big energy drink consumer. I'm not going to lie. I think it's, hard on your adrenals. I'm more adrenal supportive kind of person. But if for Liquid Death, that I think it was a genius move. That's just my opinion. So.
Yeah, and I'm curious to learn more about the caffeine source. That's always interesting. Devil's always in the details. I know that they have come out and said that it's not going to be a highly caffeinated beverage. The amount of caffeine is going to be equatable to a cup of coffee. So I would assume around 100 milligrams of caffeine, which is a way to differentiate itself. Of course, they've got their marketing arm. Just tremendous marketers. So that will give them advantage as well when they try to get some shelf space and take away shelf space from some other brands. But I guess the big controversial headline here is David. Yes, David Protein Bar. If you've been living in a basement or a bomb shelter, maybe you didn't hear, but David Protein Bar just launched a new product line, a completely different product line from what their original core line is, and they are now selling cod, frozen cod, on the internet. I'm not making this up. This is not a prank. This is a screenshot from their website. You can go on their website right now and order this product, 4 fillets for $55. And I pretty sure this is legit because I just saw a video online from the founder of Dude Wipes did a review video, and he placed an order for David Cod and cooked it up. And it is a real thing. You can go on the website and order this, and you have to check out that video that the founder of Dude Wipes did, his review video on David Cod. I'm not sure if you saw it, Jason, but I just don't want to spoil it, but I feel like I've built it up. He ends up giving the cod to his dog. It is hilarious. So, but you and I talked about this earlier in the week, Jason. I know that you've got some thoughts on David going this route.
I don't want to bash David. I don't. I think there is a strategy here in play, and it's like we're going to own the protein segment as a whole, and I get that. When I went with codfish, not the first choice of fish I would pick on taste, quality. Cod's not like a high-end fish, right? Like you're not going to a high-end restaurant and be like, oh, what kind of cod's on your
it's
menu?
not Bronzino.
Yeah, it's cod. And for the price, I was blown away that people are probably going to pay that. You can go down to your local store and get cod. It's not very expensive. It's the same amount of protein. It's not going to change. There's nothing else in it. But yeah, it's definitely, it's a zag. Like if you're going to zag a little bit, you're probably not going to get anywhere in this industry. If you're going to zag like that, you're going to get a lot of attention, whether it's good or bad, it's still attention. So it's genius in my opinion, but am I going to go run out and buy it? No, not at all. So.
And I see pros and cons to this. From the pro side, David has done a tremendous job the last couple months getting a large amount of unpaid media. I mean, everyone's talking about them in the industry, and they really haven't, outside of having to pay their PR company and maybe some members of their marketing team, they're getting a lot of free press. But from the con side, my question is, how much money have they had to invest in getting a secondary product line that is a far cry from their core product line? If you're new to the CPG industry, you're just a layman, it is expensive to launch a new product, even if it's a natural extension of what you're already manufacturing. There's cost in terms of research and development. There's cost in production, getting either creating your own production facility or contracting with the co-packer. There's distribution costs. There's marketing costs. You have to spend money to market a new product. So, David just raised a lot of money. Is this a good investment of that new capital that they are receiving when there's a lot of room and work to do in terms of building out the protein bar line? So, it's very, very curious decision here. Before we move on to the next topic here, Jason, any final thoughts there on David going the cod route?
Not really. Just just interested to see what's next. Is it even going to be food? Who knows? Is it going to be like a weight program or so? Set of weights that you buy for your house. I don't know. It's just
they're going to buy Peloton.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like I don't know, but I think we're all just grabbing our popcorn and sitting back and waiting for the next one. But you got our attention, David. So,
and something that also caught my attention this week. Del Monte. This is a company that has been in existence for 139 years, founded back in 1886. There you see the headline there. It has filed for bankruptcy, and it is in the process of strategically seeking out a buyer. And, Jason, you and I are from the same generation. Growing up, Del Monte was a household staple. It was a juggernaut in CPG. And it's, truth be told, I'm not a canned fruit guy. It's still a little sad to see, this legacy brand kind of fall by the wayside. And, there's the opportunity for it to be acquired, maybe be reinvented. But, canned fruit, is there really a future for it in today's society?
I think there's always going to be some kind of, demand for canned fruit. And not that I consume it either, but it is, first of all, let's face it. I know my grandparents who are Italian. They stock their basement like there's going to be a world war every like it's and I think there's always going to be those consumers.
Sorry to cut you off, but I had Italian grandparents too, Jason, and that was the same thing. They had a finished basement, but they had a cupboard stock full of that stuff. They had second, and a third refrigerator in their basement.
Man, I'll tell you what, it's a small, absolutely same experience and same thing. And I think there's always going to be a place for canned anything for that reason. But I think the demand is going to continue to, plummet. Fresh is the future. I mean, I don't know how many times that's been said in the last decade, but I mean, that's exactly what we pushed with Perfect Bar. Like, fresh is the future. Like, everybody wants fresher foods. People are shopping more on the outside of the aisles than the inside now. Those categories that have lived in the inside of the shelves, the center store is really starting to fall off, and retailers know that, so they're investing on the outside space. They're putting more money towards the deli items and things like that are on the perimeters. And so to me, like I think categories like that will continue to shrink. But what's crazy is, like, you can really see like a sampling program that's getting run efficiently. And I don't want to take credit for it. I might have helped with them a little bit, but the canned fish segment, when I played in canned fish when I was with Safe Catch Tuna, it's a slow category, right? Like 1 or 2 units a week, you're looking like a rock star. Or as opposed to most categories, like if you're not at least 2 to 3 units a week, you're looking like, even that small, like that's your start. So the turns were never that high to be expected. But then you see like a brand like Fishwife coming out and promoting it everywhere and building a category out. And now that category is just flourishing. And now the turns are, and now you see that can set expand. So I'm not saying canned foods are going to go. There's obviously a demand there. I just think there needs to be a different strategy for brands that are going to be in that canned space. And they have to realize that consumer is starting to fall off. So you have to bring them back, or else you're going to go into bankruptcy, just like Del Monte. And that's what I would say about it.
And I'm not a canned fruit guy, but I am a canned vegetable guy. And, I buy organic, buy good ingredients, packed with good oils. And I agree with you, Jason. I think that canned fruit, there are limitations, but I think that with the right vision, I think Del Monte, they probably became too complacent. And they didn't change with the times. I think that the packaging is dated. I know they've updated it, slightly over the years, but it's a very updated very dated packaging. You talk about Fishwife, great. The product itself is great, but what really draws people in is the branding and the packaging. It's fun, it's exciting, it's unique. And Del Monte has not really done anything in terms of its overall appearance to make drastic changes that would appeal to a younger generation. It still appeals to an older generation of customers, and many of them are aging out. Also, the ingredients. I think that for me, I'm open to canned vegetables because I'll go to a Kimberton Whole Foods and I can get really, high quality canned vegetables. Do I prefer fresh? I do, but sometimes I get busy and I don't have time to clean and prepare fresh vegetables. And if I can get a can of organic green beans, it's there's no bad ingredients in it, and the sodium's relatively low. It's easy to cook. I open the can, throw it in there, and I think that fruit is a little more challenging. But I don't go to Trader Joe's a lot, but when I go to Trader Joe's, I do see a lot of people with canned fruit, with the jarred fruit. And I think that, that could be an innovation that a Del Monte could bring in there, is to, use better ingredients and, start using clear jars, let the fruit, do the selling. But, I do think Del Monte will get acquired, and I hope it's with a company that has vision and can kind of reinvent that brand, because Jason, you hit the nail on the head with Fishwife. That is just an example of how you can take a traditional category that many feel is dated and completely turn it around. I've demoed a Fishwife, and I was blown away, by the response to it. It appealed to young and old. The packaging really called people over. The flavors kept them there. And they're using good oils. So that shows you how you can kind of reinvent that category. Perfect example there. And then, another thing I wanted to talk about with Del Monte was, in reading the articles, the CEO cited, their lack of sales, their struggles with sales kind of going in the wrong direction. He blamed it on economic conditions and also the private label business. And if I was on the board of Del Monte and I read that, I guess he's got to say something, but that's a cop-out for 2 reasons. Number one, Del Monte has got a huge, massive infrastructure. why are they, if private label is a big business and it's eating into their business, why haven't they made inroads to start being a private label player in this industry? For all I know, they could be, doing some private label stuff, but I don't know of any grocery brands out there that have a private label that manufacture the product itself. They're partnering with existing brands that have an infrastructure, and they're just skinning that product. They're changing a few of the ingredients, so it's not a completely like item of the branded item. But Del Monte, with their production facilities, they've got the trucks, they've got the infrastructure. Why haven't they done more to create a private label business? And in terms of economic downturns, people are spending less at the grocery store. But if people are having financial constraints, you would think that canned fruit would be one of the staple items that they could turn to, or at least continue to buy. Canned fruit is not that expensive. So, it's just, I think, they definitely, an acquisition is going to do Del Monte a lot of good. They need a new vision for that company. And then in terms of our news and notes, before we get to our main segment, is your brand demo friendly? We're going to talk about another legacy brand that is, feeling it in terms of seeing its sales go backwards. Kellogg has agreed to sell to Ferrero, the Italian chocolate maker, for $3.1 billion. For that news came out, I think, in the last week and a half. Ferrero has been buying a lot of brands as they try to get a foothold here in the United States market. Over the last couple of years, they've acquired Halo Top, they've acquired Nestle Candy. So very interesting to see the news come out in the last week or so that Kellogg is now selling off its cereal unit. Prior, it had sold off its snack unit, Kellanova, but now it's selling off its cereal. Jason, any initial thoughts here?
I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I'll say Vani Hari, however you want to pronounce her name, of Truvani, has probably had an impact on this. Because I'll tell you what, if there's a cereal that's in a decline, just walk to the shelves. You're going to see a lot of discos happening with Kellogg's, and honestly, it's their own fault. They made promises, they didn't deliver to the American public. And they're getting called out on it every day right now. And, I don't know if you follow Vani Hari or any of that on Instagram, but I do. And it's, I'm proud of what she's accomplished. Honestly, it's something that I've hoped would happen for the last 25 years I've been in this industry, that finally we start getting the dyes out of foods and things. And it's necessary for us to start making the changes that everybody else in the world has already made. But the fact that they were manufacturing the same product and using better ingredients overseas, but not wanting to change that here. I mean, honestly, I think they overpaid. That's what I'm saying right now. I think they really overpaid for that, and it'll be interesting to see if they can do anything to somehow get that name back into standing where people really respect it, because I don't think it's there. So
do you feel like also the better for you cereal movement, is that, a legitimate impact in terms of, legacy cereal sales? Is that a real thing, or is that just hype?
I think it is a real thing. I mean, I got to be honest, like I've switched to Three Wishes, and I'm not a big cereal guy, but there's, if I want higher protein and I want less sugar, and I think a lot of people are doing the same thing, and ingredients do matter to people now. But the education on ingredients has improved so much because of a lot of the movements that are happening right now. People are starting to pay a lot more attention to what they're eating. And absolutely, I don't know if it's the better for you cereal necessarily, but I think it's a lot of the ingredients that Kellogg's does use that people are just like, hey, I'm going to go buy those better for you cereals for my kids, because I'd much rather them consume something I feel good about. Right. And it should, it might be a higher price, but, you pay for quality, and, the results, obviously you don't want to be consuming a product that is directly linked to, I'm not going to say anything specific because I don't know what kind of lawsuit could come at me, but there's a lot of things that are in those ingredients that Kellogg's uses that are big no-nos, and everybody knows that. So now especially.
And you got Magic Spoon out there. I'm not saying it's the best ingredient list for that, but it is lower in sugar.
Yeah.
A brand that I'm not a cereal guy either, Jason, but I do have it on hand. Just, sometimes I need to eat a quick breakfast. Big fan of the Real Cereal Company.
Yeah, no, I've tried that too. I love it too. It's good stuff.
And about a year and a half ago, I was at Expo West. There was another product called Best Behavior Cereal. Haven't really seen it, expand majorly into retail. I ordered it online. That's another good one as well. So, I think better for you is, I don't think the practice of people eating cereal in the morning, I don't think that's going to go away. But we're seeing Kellogg's sales kind of disintegrate before our very eyes, and I do believe that some of these better for you options they've taken some of that market share. So,
and it's funny too. I don't know if you recall, but I remember Ghost coming out with a cereal. I think it was last year, and I was expecting that to hit shelves pretty fast. And that's another one that hasn't really. And it was the high protein to me. Like it definitely had the protein call out, but once again, the ingredients weren't great. So I'm just, I think so much attention has been brought to the ingredients in Kellogg's cereal and what they were using versus what they're using in Canada and Europe. That's really what's going to hurt that acquisition more than anything. How are they going to come back from that now? Like they made a promise. I don't know what year it was. I think it was 2015 or 17 to remove the food dyes from those products. They never did here in the United States. Here we are in 2025, and now they're doing it because they've been kind of forced to do it. But it's a whole nother thing when it's brought to light the way it's been in the media. And I think the share is just going to continue to decline. And like you said, I think cereal as a whole is in a decline. I haven't seen consumption data on the category myself. I would just guess that just because there's just such a higher movement back to eggs and meats and things like that, and more nutrient-dense forms of protein in the morning than some kind of like processed cereal product, right? So, and the Real Cereal Company, I love that you mentioned it because it is really what is it, 2 or 3 ingredients? Like it's very simple and but it's fun to eat. So, to me, that's where the play is. If you're going to grow in the category, you either it has to be clean, it has to be the right ingredients, obviously. And obviously the protein call out's always going to help in today's world. So
protein's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Protein's everything.
Well, it's time for our main event now. This is what we've been advertising all week. We want to talk about what makes a product demo friendly. Jason, my belief is if I were to become a product founder and I would engineer the product to be built around ease of demos. I would not want to enter into this space as a CPG product founder and come into it without a product that could not be demoed easily. I think some products that are very innovative, they're a little too technical and too involved, and you see some of the issues. Like Meaty Foods is a good example. Very innovative product using mycelium, as an alternative protein. And it needed to be demoed, but it could not easily be demoed. And, you have such a storied history of helping build brands such as Perfect Bar from almost the infancy and capturing market share from some major traditional players. What are some of the attributes that make a product demo friendly, that make it easy to get the product off the table, off the shelf, and into people's carts?
I mean, first and foremost, and everybody knows this, you win on taste. I mean, that is your North Star when you're creating any product in CPG that's consumable, obviously, and it has to taste good. That said, you have to really pay attention to ingredients. I know margins are tight, and I understand as a founder, you're always thinking, how can I increase my profit margins? Everybody tells you when you're creating an item, you need to be around 60, 70% before you even touch any other point. Like you need to have that kind of margin built in. So I can see why a lot of founders do go for substandard ingredients sometimes, or maybe an ingredient that could be considered cleaner, but still, to me, like if I was a founder right now and say I was gonna create a hummus brand, just because I'm coming from the hummus set, the first and foremost, I don't believe in the whole seed oil debate in the way it's being just. I have a degree in nutrition. I know that seed oils are not created equal, right? The way it's extracted, there's so much more that goes. It's just like gluten, the gluten conversation. Like everybody just all of a sudden thought they were gluten intolerant. It's the way that's processed. Like when you take all the important nutrients out of the grain itself, and then add the B vitamins back to it, and then it's refined and it's not really digestible. Our bodies have always been consuming wheat in its original form, or in some format where it was the whole sprout or whatever it was. And then in the last 50, 100 years, we started damaging that wheat to the point where you're just removing everything out. And it's the same thing with the oils, right? You start using hexane, things like that to derive the seed oils from the seeds themselves. Expeller press, things like that, a lot better way to do it. I'm not going to do anything about the seed oil debate. That's between everybody else, and they can go
do a whole show
whatever they want. But to me, like if I was going to create a brand, I would definitely be very cognizant of what is not on trend, and that is one of those things. Like I would be using olive oil. I'd be using the highest possible. I'd be looking at regenerative if I could. If I could do it regenerative, I'd do it that way. Why? Because before I'd create anything, I'd go to the one banner that I really want to work with more than anything. And in my opinion, as a better for you brand, your North Star is Whole Foods still. Your premium customers there every day. Like you can go into any conventional market. It's an 80-20 rule, just like anything else in this world, right? 80% of your customer base is at Whole Foods everyday shopping. You have a premium customer. They know that they call it a whole paycheck for a reason. They're there to shop with their dollar, right? And a lot of them are there to try something new. They're trying to improve the way they eat, things like that. Your discovery, your trial, and people are a lot more willing to open their pocket and spend money on. So I would design it just for that. And I would meet with a forager in my region. I'd say, what is on trend for hummus? Like what would you say I would need to make this the best, not just even tasting, but ingredient wise. And I've listened to them because they know the trends more than anyone else, because they're dealing with the customers day in and day out. They're like, hey, I don't want this. I don't want this. I don't want this in that product. And those brands that didn't really do that or don't do that never really get on their shelves. And it's unfortunate, but having an education in place to where you're not only just creating something that you want to taste good and be scalable, but you also want to create something that is going to be so easy to not only just demo, but to get that trial and conversion when somebody reads the ingredients. Like you don't want to have anything in there that somebody's questioning, whether it's soy, anything like that, like any allergens. If you can avoid them, do it. Do your research, do it as deep as you can. If you can, obviously margins are very important. But it doesn't matter how great your margins are if you can't get on the dang shelf. That's all I can say. So
I want to go back to what you led off with, because that's what I lead off with, is taste. And I feel that a mistake that a lot of emerging founders make is that they do not workshop the taste and texture of their product enough. You recommended that we listen to the episode that how I built this where the Keith family. And that was a great episode. It was amazing hearing them talk. But one of the things they talked about was that, they had to go beyond when they were taste testing new products. They had to go beyond just their family and friends, because friends and family, they're impressed that you've done that created this product, that you're doing something out there. And of course, they're going to love it. Of course, they're going to tell you they love it. You got to go beyond that. You got to get impartial representatives to sample your product and give you real feedback and perfect the taste before you go to mass market. There are just too many brands out there, and I try them as a consumer, and I go and I try the product. I'm excited by it, and then just like, did they taste test this? Like who greenlighted this taste profile and thought that it was going to do well on the mass market? And you see those products come in and you see them go out 3 months later. So you've got to make sure you get the taste right and don't fall in love with your own product. Get it out there with people that do not have a sentimental or emotional connection to you and the launch of your company. And, get it out there with people that are unbiased and listen to what they have to say. Do not fight them on it. Do not try to, overlook their opinion. Don't try to find ways to discredit what they're telling you. Listen to them. And if it's just one or two people, obviously everybody's different. Personal preference between amongst people, is always different. But if there's a prevailing obstacle, you're hearing the same thing over and over again, then that tells you got to make some changes to your product. So don't fall in love with your own product. I cook for people sometimes, and I've learned the hard way, the way I like my food to taste is not how a lot of the masses tend to like their food. So I have to make changes when I cook for people other than myself. Another big thing that I think makes a product demo friendly is where the product lives in the store. Are you in a category that is in a well-trafficked part of the store? Because one of the tenets of brand ambassador consultants, my agency, is that I train all of our brand ambassadors to fish where the fish are. We need to set up where the people are so that we can get the max amount of sample impressions and units through the register. And sometimes the plan is beautiful. It works, comes together, and it's great. We're in a high trafficked area of the store, and we're demoing just a few feet away from the home location of the product. And we're able to push samples out, make some sales, and then really lay the foundation for retention sales, because we're right next to the product. Now we're educating the consumer where the product lives, where they can find it when we're not in the store. But there are products out there that I've worked with that they were, buried in a bad portion of the store, and sometimes they say, why don't we demo near the product? It's like, well, we're going to be in the back aisle of the back row. No one's going to walk by the table. Like we've got to be where the people are. But that creates the challenge that when you demo far from your product, you can do well that day. But if it's hard to explain and show the customer where they can find the product when we're not there, that makes your product unfriendly. You want to try to make sure you're getting good placement, and also the amount of facings also works. That really helps as well. But that's my 2 cents on that topic. Anything to add there?
Well, I've been on the brand side a lot, with category merchants and things. And the problem with that conversation, Sam, is if you're an emerging brand and you don't have any really strong turns to show them or data or anything, that, your velocities are key. That's the whole reason of doing demos. And if you don't have strong velocities to start out with, or if you're absolutely brand new to the market, most likely they're going to put you on the top shelf. They're going to give you the bottom. They're going to give you a really tough spot to sell out of. So to me, the one thing I would always say is, if you can't get close to your product, get to the space where you're going to get the most people, period. That's the key. Like, yeah, you might be tucked in a corner set of the set, wherever you are, but there's one location in that grocery store that gets the most traffic guaranteed any day of the week. And it's in the milk and eggs department. And if you can set up right back there in the middle of the aisle and catch people from going on both sides and they're shopping for milk and eggs, you can educate and convert a consumer. It doesn't matter where you're selling in the store, because you're going to get more people in that area than anywhere else. And that's just after doing thousands of demos myself in retail. If I can't find a good spot, it's either, and you can make an argument to set up by the registers. And I do get that. But the problem with the registers is a lot of people are just going to take the sample and go, because if you have the product somewhere on a center aisle or somewhere on, somewhere away from anywhere from there, unless you can set up a display right where you're sampling, obviously that's awesome. But if you can't do that, get up in the milk and eggs department. Just be there in the middle and just sell, because most of the people are going to shop for one of those two or both. So.
Another key point that makes a product and brand demo friendly is some simplicity of the sample. Now, if you're already an existing founder, your product is what it is. But let's say you're watching our show and you want to be in the CPG industry. You want to launch a CPG brand, and you're thinking about which direction to go in. The simplicity of the sample is very paramount. Beverages and snacks like chips, they are easy to demo. It's interesting that Mark Samuel who started I Want Organics. He's, launching a new company called Mark Snacks. And it's a simple concept. It's kettle cooked potato chips with good ingredients. I don't know if he plans to demo the product, but if he does, it's going to be very simple to set up a demo program and have brand ambassadors go into a store. That setup's going to take less than 20 minutes. And the sample delivery is simple. You're going to open a bag, put some chips in a bowl, keep that, bowl away from the hands of the customers. You're going to have a brand ambassador with food safe gloves, and, they'll grab a napkin, wrap a chip in that napkin, and hand the napkin to the customer. And the customer's going to try it, and they're either going to like it or not. It's a very simple concept. Same thing with beverages. It's just, you pour the sample and the customer drinks the sample. But there are products out there that are just very, very technical, that require also like buying an enhancement. You have to buy a secondary product off the shelf to pair it with your existing product. So I know that, Jason, when you started, representing Perfect Bar, it's very, very simple sample delivery. You cut the bars up and, put a toothpick in the bar, and here you go. And we're ready to go here.
No, and this is a great topic to touch on, because you're right. And with Perfect Bar, it was pretty simple. Like you said, we'd cut up the bar. We had a little cutter. We'd cut it up in equal size, put it in little cups, have people, you either would hand them to them or they take them off the table. And it was great. And then I had a little conundrum with the hummus, because, you can't just have someone dip something in there themselves. That's not food safety. You can't allow that.
Yep.
And you have to find what's the best way to deliver the hummus, right? Is it a pita chip? Is it a carrot? Is it both? Are people going to eat, the ingredients that are in the pita chip? Is there going to be blowback? And there was a time where we were doing both carrot chips and a chip or a cracker. And then we just found that, what's the easiest way just to do this? And we just started buying Whole Foods 365 chips and just doing it that way. Because at the end of the day, if the person didn't want to eat the chip, we could at least dip the hummus, the hand in the chip, and they could taste the hummus off and not eat the chip. And we just found that was the easiest way to do it. But there is always that extra spend. You have to make sure there's inventory on those things too. But there's also a unique aspect. You can look at it that way too. If you're a brand who has a chip or a cracker and a hummus brand, if you can partner up and save on the cost for the demo, you can split it. It's a lot more effective that way. You can have a lot more reach when you're not, instead of paying for 50 demos at the full price, you can pay for 100 demos at half the price and split that demo cost. And to me, that's the perfect marriage. Like, you can get those and brand ambassadors call it double dipping. But it's one of those things. It's like, you kind of need sometimes to have a partnership like that to be super successful when you want to scale at a large size, when you have a limited budget to do it with. So something you should always entertain when you have a product that needs some kind of delivery unit, maybe partnering up with another brand who's trying to get trial and awareness and wants to do the same thing you're doing. So,
and what's not simple are cooking demos, products that require cooking. Jason, as a field marketing manager who's been in this industry and has represented several brands, have you ever worked for a brand and, launched a program built around a cook to order product?
It's so hard. I've tried and I've had successful demos with it, but the hardest part for any demo program, I think everybody knows this, is having enough product in the store to sell. Yeah. And the problem with a cooking demo is not only are you have to have electricity, you have to have some way of cooking it in the store. You have to make sure that person's going to cook it correctly. That's a massive thing. And obviously you see them do this at Costco. So it is scalable. They pull it off. But the problem with it is most stores that aren't Costco don't have outlets readily available on the end of a frozen cap or, so you really have to set up the demo wherever there is electricity. And most of the time they're not in the most ideal locations for foot traffic or nowhere near where the product is sold. And that's hard. And it's just one of those things too, getting enough product to sell at a high level when you're in those kinds of spaces, because it's definitely a fresh product is also another obstacle you got to jump through. Like, you can tell the store to order 34 cases of whatever maybe it's a pizza, whatever. They're most likely not going to, because they're going to order enough to pack out that shelf. But anything else, they don't have a lot. If you ever go in the back of a store, their frozen backstock cooler is tiny.
Yep.
And they're not really even allowed to have backstock and retailers like Whole Foods. It's a truck to shelf rule. And that's where most retailers are these days with their SAP systems. So it's a very challenging, like it can be done, I'm sure, but it's going to be a lot harder to scale that kind of thing, especially with the added costs of all the materials that go into it. That's what I'd say.
And if you're watching us live on LinkedIn or YouTube, our StreamYard connection is hooked up to comments. So if you have any thoughts on what Jason and I are talking about right now, you want to ask us questions about what makes a brand demo friendly, or any ideas about brands that you work with that are demo friendly, any questions at all, drop it in the comment link, and that should appear here on our side, and we'll get that question here up and answered. And the cooking demo thing, the first demos I did in this industry 10 years ago were for a ready-to-eat brand called Adele's Gourmet Chicken Sausage. And that was a cooking demo, but they knew the limitations and they created some hacks built around that. And, the great thing about Adele's was it was an already cooked sausage. It was sold out of the refrigerated meat section, but it was ready to eat. I was able to throw it on one of those, portable electric grills, griddles. You just threw it in there, and we didn't even need to buy cooking oil. We would use water, and it would just kind of boil up a little bit and heat up, and you just cut it and serve it. That was easy. So, cooking demos can work if it's a ready to eat product. But the other thing that Adele's did that really stood out was when they would send me into a conventional grocery store, it was not a 3-hour demo. It wasn't even a 4-hour demo. They would have me sometimes demo for 6 hours. And you mentioned that obstacle, trying to get enough perishable product brought in by a meat manager or a grocery manager. And that was one of the ways Adele's got around that. They would say, basically, our brand ambassador, is going to be there for 6 hours. It's okay to bring in a lot of product because he or she will be there for quite some time. It will not be a 4-hour demo. So that was one thing that really, made things easier. But you mentioned the access to outlets, Jason. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like all of the newer store builds have less accessible electric outlets than the older stores. Like, it's crazy. You go into a new Whole Foods, and it is not easy to get access to a electrical port. And the other thing is, when you do conventional grocery store demos that are 3 or 4 hours at some of these older regional chains, half the time the outlets don't even work anymore. So that's some obstacles you will face if you are a cooking product. But another thing point that I want to bring up that makes a brand demo friendly: messaging. Is your product and your brand's mission easy and concise for a brand ambassador to communicate to a customer? Like for instance, I'll go back to Mark's Snacks. If he demos that product, it's a potato chip. No one's going to ask, what is this? What do I do with it? There are products that I have represented that were, very innovative, that were unique, and people had to ask, what is this? Years ago, about 8 years ago, I demoed a European yogurt product called Quark, and it was like a French yogurt. It was almost like a cheese yogurt concept, and it just, I couldn't get people to try it because it was not easy to explain. I'm having trouble now explaining on the air what the product was. I remember I worked in more recent times for a crunchy corn snack. And crunchy corn is big in other parts of the country, but it's not like a potato chip. It's not like a tortilla chip. It's not something that Americans grew up snacking on. And I would have people, they would look at it, they would see the package and say, well, what is it? And it was good. I worked with someone at that company that had been there longer than I had, and she was smart. I demoed with her, and she would get that question all the time from people. What is this? What do I do with it? And she would say, oh, it's crunchy corn. And I was like, man, that is the best, most simple explanation to communicate to the customer. But there are products that I've worked with where I could not boil it down to one sentence. When you do a demo, founders that come into this that have never done a demo, they'll write some of their curriculum, and it's like they're selling a car or a diamond. That's not how demo sales works. It's an elevator pitch. You have less than 10 seconds sometimes to hook a customer and get them over. So if your product's very complicated and cannot be boiled down to a simple and concise message, it's going to be an uphill battle. The other big thing is just the utility of the product. Like it's easy to sell someone orange juice. It's like, well, everybody knows I'll drink orange juice in the morning with breakfast. Oh, that's cereal. I'll sample this cereal, and if I like it, I'll buy it. I'll have it in the morning. You want to make sure that you understand where the product fits into the lifestyle of American consumers. And then another thing I'll throw in there that makes a product demo friendly, the ability to sell in large quantities. That is why I love working with protein drinks or any beverage of any kind, and protein bars or any type of nutritional bar, because usually they come in shipped in a case, and sometimes the staff of the store breaks the case down, but usually backstock is not broken down. It is kept in a case. A big key though is when you're getting authorization, when you're talking to global buyers, regional buyers, and trying to gain acceptance into a chain. If you are a beverage or a bar, you're going to want to try to push up front, in addition to having the individual UPC coded into the store's system, get the case pack UPC coded into the system. And one thing I always loved about Wegmans and Whole Foods, and sometimes the staff didn't even know, and sometimes I didn't even know until I got up the register, sometimes discounts are built in just to the case code scanning. So that is always something you should look at. And it's hard to do once you've gained acceptance and you've submitted all the paperwork. It's hard to work with a buyer to have something changed. It's easier to have all of that accounted for, coded into the system when you first gain acceptance. And
no,
before I go into the next one, wanted to just see if you had anything to add there as well.
That's a great call out, Sam. And honestly, when you're negotiating those case price too, like, as someone who manages trade, I'd always recommend trying to push for an EDLP on that and not go high low ever. You go high low on the singles because that's where you're going to get trial, but always keep that EDLP. It's so much easier to manage your trade if it's EDLP. Obviously Wegmans is EDLP driven, but most retailers like a Whole Foods and stuff are a high-low retailer. And being high-low, you want to promote for the single items to get trial and awareness, but that case cost is really nice just to lock in an EDLP. You're always going to make the same margin. You're always going to be spending the same trade, and it's really easy to manage your trade. But that's just a little trade secret just to help brands if you're doing that. One other thing that, I always like to call out to brands too is, like, it's one thing to sell your item just on the attributes of the ingredients and the taste and everything we've talked about. But if you have a unique selling story, that is an education piece that you need to have your team educated on. And that is literally what we built Perfect Bar on, was not just obviously they tasted great, but the story of the kids on the bus and everything was so fun to tell. And man, when people learned it was a family-owned business of 13 kids, but bootstrapping it, just all that, man, their willingness to invest and buy more was just like that. It was just crazy, like the turnaround. But not only that, but the fan base and clientele we built around that story was phenomenal. And this, what you mentioned, the podcast that Ari Raz did with them just in June, I think it was, just the last month. I mean, it touches on that, but man, I can tell you 10 years ago, pretty much every consumer in Whole Foods could tell you that dang story because we just told it so much. So it's one of those things, like, your story is important when you're an emerging brand. That story, whatever it is, that founder story, you can play a lot off that to build a clientele and a customer base, just because people relate to stories. Like, they want to hear your story. They want to know what it took to get on that shelf with that product, or your why is what everybody says. Like, what is your why? Something to really focus on when you're building a brand.
Yeah, so people felt a connection. They still do to this day to the Perfect Bar brand. And when you communicate that story and it resonates with the consumer, they become your most loyal customers. Anytime you launch a new product, they're all in. They can't wait to try it. So that's, forming that connection. So great call out there. My last one, Jason, last attribute that makes a product demo friendly is price. And the vast majority of people watching this show, they're like-minded like us. They come from the better for you world, and better for you products are a premium product. They're using better ingredients to make a better product. Therefore, it's going to cost more. But there has to be a fine line. And, the product that I'm going to call out here, and I enjoy the product. I love what they're doing, but masa, the chips, $15 bag of tortilla chips, and it tastes great. Hey, I would never turn down an opportunity to represent a brand like that and a product like that and demo it. And their chips, the Vandy potato chips, they're awesome as well. But again, you're looking at $13 to $15 for a bag of potato chips. They're awesome, but if they're going for volume sales, that I think is a little bit of a too aggressive ask. There has to be, that understanding of like, where is the right price point to come into the market? Where, if we're going to demo this product, what is the price that we need to be at in order for the product to really move? And I've worked with a couple brands. They came in very high with their product, and we got feedback through demo reports, kept coming back over and over again. Like it's too, the everyday low price is too much. It's too much. And a couple of them took that feedback to heart, and they figured out a way to drop their everyday low price down, the EDLP down by $1. So price is a factor. I understand margins. Understand that when you make a better product, you're using better ingredients and it costs more to make, but you gotta really crunch the numbers. I think $15 for a bag of tortilla chips is it's an aggressive ask.
Yeah, and on that point too, like do your research, go into the retail market, see what your competition's selling at. Like you just mentioned, if you're $14.99 and everybody else is $5 or less, I mean, you might get trial, but it's going to be challenging. And your trade down is not going to entice anybody at that price, because no matter what, you're probably going to be trading at what, $12.99 on promo, like who knows? But it's like you mentioned, like there's certain price elasticity on any items. It doesn't matter how quality it is, that you have to be adherently aware of. And doing that research in retail to start is really important. Like, know your market, know your strategy, know your customer base. Obviously, if you're looking at a premium item, you can charge more. And that's why I'm saying Whole Foods is your North Star for those brands. But there still is those price breaks where you're just like asking somebody, just like, it's going to be tough for someone to open. They might do it once, but to build a consistent consumer, you're going to need to be at least friendly enough on the wallet to justify them going back for those items. So.
And Jason, I've got a ton more notes, but we're approaching an hour here. We could do easily 2 to 3 hours on this topic. So we're not going to get to everything here, but I do want to kind of do a lightning round segment with you and talk about the best products that we've personally demoed over the years. I'm going to kick it off, and you kind of stole my thunder early on, but I had a chance to demo the product earlier this year. That's Fishwife. That product is fun and simple to demo. I didn't really know what to expect. I was kind of surprised because I tried it, but tinned fish is, it's a unique category, but they have figured it out. They have mastered it. They've kind of reinvented the category. And when I demoed it, the product flew. And it was easy. It was easy to demo. It's not a chip, it's not a beverage, but it was still easy to demo. You open the tin, you mix up the fish a little bit, you dice it up a little bit, and you serve it on a cracker, or you serve it on a spoon or a little plastic cup. You hand it to the customer, and they loved the taste. When you would talk about the ingredients, there was no objection to the ingredients. And when you demo it in the right retailers, they understand the price. So that was a brand that I think is, if you got a product like Fishwife, you should demo the hell out of it, because if you do it the right way, it's not a marketing loss leader. You can engineer it, and it could be a actually sales driver. You can profit on just about every demo because you can sell so much product that way.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know, Sam. I'm going to go this route. You're probably going to hate me for it, but half-day teas, right?
I'm not going to hate. No hate there. Nothing but love. Nothing but love.
Okay, it is what it is, man. But here it is. So I sampled their products long before the new innovation or we're talking going years back when they were first hitting the market. It was in a Giant. And, you know, if you're in this industry, you probably know that you're not supposed to sell in Giants. But when you have relationships and you know people, you can do whatever you want. And so I went into a store and I talked to one of my local Giants. I'm like, hey, can I come sell this for you? You guys know how I sell. I'd sold in that Giant multiple times before, I'm not going to lie. So they ordered about 200 cans for me, and they let me build an end cap for the day. And I basically blew the entire store out just in 4 hours. And I'm talking like a store in Stowe, Pennsylvania. Like, you know, like
not
an area where you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like in the middle of nowhere, just crushed it. And dude, it's a great tasting product. It's more on trend now than it was then. But man, I'll tell you what, beverage is fun, and it was fun. It was fun to sell, and that's a product that when it's demoed, it sells really well. It's a very strong seller.
And that's a great point there. That's another thing, another attribute we could have thrown into what makes a brand's product demo friendly, and that's relevancy. I mean, you know, a product like Half Day, it's the right product for the right time. You know, if protein is all the rage now, but also prebiotic fiber is the rage now. So you want to make sure, like, is this product that I'm going to launch, you know, does it appeal to the needs and wants of today's consumer market? So make sure you're on trend rather than be off trend. If you're going to come into the market off trend, you better have a great, compelling story, a good marketing campaign that's going to make something that's not on trend suddenly become popular. And again, we'll go back to Fishwife. You know, tin fish, you know, it was an easy sell. It was, hey, this isn't your grandparents' tin fish. You know, they kind of, you know, but they had that hook. They had that entry pathway to victory there. And you want to make sure that, you know, if you're not on trend, that what you have going for you, that you know how to turn it into a trend. I'm going to throw another one out here. This is an old school one, and most people watching this will not remember it. But if you do watch Shark Tank, maybe you remember it. This was one of my first clients back in the day. The product is not in existence anymore. It was off the cob chips. It was a sweet corn tortilla chip. We used to sell a ton of it at Wegmans. And I used to, my big elevator pitch, the big hook to try to get a customer to come over to my table. Hey, come on over here and try the best tortilla chip you've ever tried. And damn it, 75% of them agreed with me. And it really is the best tortilla chip I've ever had. It's no longer in existence. If I were to win the lottery, Jason, tomorrow, I would contact the founders and I would buy the intellectual property rights to off the cob chips and the recipe. And I would get into the sweet corn tortilla chip business. Everyone does, you know, the standard tortilla chip, but this sweet corn tortilla chip, Jason, was excellent. And we sold a ton. You know, that was one where, you know, at Wegmans, the managers at first, they wouldn't bring too much of it in because it just wasn't selling when it wasn't demoed. And then we started doing demos. And then they would bring in even more than we asked for because we could sell anywhere between 80 to 100 units during a 3-hour demo. It would just fly off the shelves there. So that's one of my all-time favorites. But that was a product that led with taste. People put it in their mouth and they said, "Oh my gosh, this is stunning."
Well, I hate to say this, Sam. I got to jump for a meeting here at 1:00. So, but
I'm
going to throw one more brand out there that I sampled a long time ago. I don't even know if they're still in business, but Betty Lou's nut butter balls. And I've never really seen a nut butter ball scale. So, and I was actually talking to someone who's trying to start a nut butter business out of Austin yesterday. I kind of poo-pooed on the idea. I was like, look, it's really hard to scale that. But their nut butter balls ingredients were amazing. Betty was awesome. The coconut macadamia nut one was 10 grams of protein. It was whey based. It was so delicious. And honestly, when I sampled it, I'd sell out every time, but I don't know what happened to that brand. I don't know if they're still around. Great product though. It would even still be on trend today ingredient wise. I do the same thing you said, Sam. If I won the lottery, I'd probably reach out and find Betty and be like, "Betty, let's go. Let's go big." Yep. So.
All right. Well, that just about does it. Jason's got a call. I've got to get back to work. We appreciate everybody joining us. It's been a fun show today. I want to thank everybody that joined us on LinkedIn Live. I want to thank everybody that joined us on YouTube. There you see it. That is the banner. We will be back. Forget about the ticker. We're not going to do Wednesday next week. We're coming back next Friday again, July 25th at noon. It's going to be Bar Wars. This is Jason's concept. This is his idea. We've been doing brand product drafts, mock drafts. Jason and I are going head to head with building a fantasy team of nutritional bars. Jason, you're going to be the prohibitive favorite. You've got the perfect bar background. I am going to have my work cut out for me to try to put together a team of nutritional bars that's going to upstage yours.
Game on.
We'll see you next Friday. Thank you for joining us for the Demo Guys podcast. He is Jason Smith. I am Sam Kaplan. We will see you next Friday, noon Eastern.
Thanks, everybody.